And we're live. Hi, Lauren.
Hey Mary, how are you?
I'm good. I did not have time to dry my hair or let it dry this morning. Busy morning. But yeah, it's another Friday, a Tech Bros Friday. These come around fast. Um, Not a whole lot going on other than in non-tech world news. I announced my filing a lawsuit against Southwest Airlines and fielding some media
Yes.
requests for that. Um, but other than that, yeah, not a whole lot. What about you?
Not doing that, but moved into a new office, and so I've got, things going on behind me that are little, construction projects, but all
Ah,
good.
so if
You know,
if your internet's a little bit wonky, it's due to the new office. Got it. Got it. Okay.
yeah,
Awesome.
it's not because I'm totally crazy. It's because I'm just moving into a new place. So I'm excited.
Yeah, the new office for your consultancy, which is what we're going to get into today. Um, Interestingly, I've heard that this is something that people actually want to hear from us. I heard when I was at the Snowflake conference a few weeks ago, a few people said to me that this is how to be a consultant, how to be a data consultant in particular is something that the people want to hear from us. So I don't think I'd even told you that,
Hmm.
but you came up with the idea for this and came up with these terrific guests. So let's bring them in and get started. All right, and I'm going to let you do the intros because I followed them both on the socials for a while, but to be honest, they're your friends, and they'll be all of our friends by the end of the show. So welcome, Joe and
Yeah,
Rocky.
Hey,
yeah. Welcome to both
hello.
of you, and so for people who don't know, today we're doing an episode about running your own consulting shop and transitioning from maybe you're an individual contributor, maybe you're a manager of a team, maybe you've done both in your career, how to do that as a consultant, how to run your own ship, run your own shop, and get work with different customers, work with multiple customers at one time. We're going to get all into it. Feel free to drop your questions. Like we usually do, at some point we can open up the the viewership, and people can come on later in the show as well if you want to ask some questions or share your thoughts or anything else. But good to have you both here, Rocky and Joe. And I'll start with you, Rocky. What's your background? What are you doing now? What are you looking into these days?
Yeah, so I have a background in data and finance. I went to undergrad for finance. I got into data really just because it seemed like a solid career. It wasn't crazy hours. You got to do interesting stuff. Worked at a couple startups, most notably Drizzly and Vendor, and learned a lot about like how did people used to do this? How are they trying to do it now? Sometimes succeeding, sometimes failing, and realized that I enjoyed the building up of stuff a lot, less so interested in the maintenance long term of some of those things. So becoming a consultant and
Mm-hmm.
being there from the get go and building it up became really attractive to me, and that's why I'm doing what I do now, and I've been enjoying it a lot.
Right on. And Joe, what's your background and how'd you get to where you are today?
Yeah, so these days I focus on data engineering and data architecture, mostly for startups, but some enterprise clients as well. I ran a couple data teams, um, two different startups in different industries. I was a technical product manager for a data platform team and also a data engineer. So kind of always been in the space. Before that, I actually was in acquisition and marketing, which was a whole different experience, but it was actually a really good kind of like launch pad into a more technical domain because it does kind of lay that business foundation. And coincidentally, the guy who hired me was fired, so I had to figure stuff out pretty quickly. Um, so it's been a
That's
ride.
always the
I've
that's
only
always the
been
best.
Yes, I feel like trial by fire is usually the best way to sort things out quickly.
Sink or swim, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And then if you're like, oh wow, the business fired some other person, well, I better do a good job or they'll get rid of me too. So it's very. I've definitely been there in my career where a couple, and, but yeah, um, in your analytics, like Rocky, when you got started and said, I'm going to go off on my own, do my own thing, and look into my own stuff. Like, how did you get started, and how did that all work for you for transitioning from being a full-time employee somewhere to sticking out your own shingle, your own mast, and everything? And I knew the answer because I helped you do it, but
Yeah.
happy to chat through any of that.
Yeah,
Laura's going to take all the credit at the end of this.
No, hey, that's fine. It helps to have really good friends like Lauren Ballack in your corner. No, really, like, honestly, reaching out to the people that you know who might know someone who needs help if you don't directly know the people who are either responsible for bringing on contracts to fill out that kind of need. Honestly, like, I was just kind of poking around wherever I could because these are not the kinds of things that are posted everywhere, right? These are the things you have to do a little bit of digging to find out the existing need. Because folks don't go posting, hey, I need like 10 hours a week of advice on, fixing up my Snowflake to Looker setup. You have to dig to find that, and being able to, kind of strike up a conversation with folks about the state of their data team, the state of their business, and do a little problem solving on your own end to see, hey, is this something that I could plug into and we could both get a lot of value out of, is really what I started by doing, and just kind of following one thing to another. And it's only been about a year and a half for me of doing this, but that has proved to go really well so far. I don't do a ton with my online presence. Like, I'm not super big on LinkedIn or Twitter or anything, unlike some of my friends here. But it can happen through word of mouth. It can happen through a lot of different channels for you.
Yeah, right on. And you, Joe, how did you kind of transition to all of this? Like, what was I don't want to call it a breaking point, but maybe like the aha moment, or like what made you say, I'm going forward with this, I'm doing my own thing, and we'll see how that works out?
Yeah, I had set up a number of stacks of varying complexity at different companies where I was fully employed. And I came into one that was set up by a consultancy, which cost a lot of money. And I was very disappointed at what I saw. I don't really want to name names right now, but if anybody's curious, you can just hit me up on Twitter or something. I'll tell you. And it was like a probably all in $250,000 or $300,000 roughly for this setup. And I just knew I could do it better on my own. So I actually was moonlighting while I had a full-time job running a data team and doing some subcontracting work. Honestly, over the years, just kind of working at different teams at different companies, I developed some pretty strong opinions on things. And I figured, what the hell? Like, I think I know my stuff as well as I feel I do. So just going to start poking around and seeing where it takes me.
Yeah, and it's curious. I'm curious to dig into like what you mentioned. Like, you mentioned cost as a big thing. Like, reasons to hire a consultant. There's, you're too early. You don't want to hire a team yet. Maybe you just want to try some stuff out, like the business, and get something set up. Maybe costs have gotten out of control. Maybe quality has gotten out of control. Maybe, there's only one team that's being served. Maybe it's finance or maybe it's marketing, but other teams need to be served as well. No one wants to put forward that full-time headcount for it. Like what do you both find is a big impetus for like why someone calls you up, why someone wants you in there instead of a full-time employee? What are you both finding?
Yeah, there's been a couple of scenarios where, the business has like one person as a data team. I think that's a pretty sweet spot to bring in a consultant, because if you're still the 0-person data team, your needs are quite different, right? You probably haven't bought anything. You probably aren't really servicing your inside teams. But if there's like a data team of one somewhere and they just need help, kind of extending themselves, they've got just a tiny foundation working and they need to build that out more. I found that as a really great place to bridge the gap between just that fledgling data team and engineering and the rest of the business's operations. Like with most of these folks data stacks, like I can give you best practices and guidelines so that if you've got like 4 hours a week from one of your software engineers, they can probably make sure some of these data operations are going just fine when things need to get updated and moved around. You don't need that full-time data hire, that second full-time data hire yet.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. I think it's sexy for most businesses to say, oh, we have X number of people on our data team, when in reality, it's probably more of a cost than a revenue driver. I don't think that's controversial at this point. Like enough people have kind of realized that. But really, I've seen probably 2 or 3 different paths where somebody could take advantage, or 2 or 3 different profiles where a company could take advantage of a consultant. One is what Rocky just said. In some cases, maybe it's that person left or is about to leave, and there's nobody who knows how things work. Another is that the CEO or some executive like knows things could work a certain way, but there's nobody with that expertise on hand to actually make things happen. So whether it's redoing some core component of a data product and launching that for a new revenue stream, like that's a pretty common occurrence that I've seen recently, where people are trying to go beyond just the reporting and more into like how do we better utilize what we have.
Yeah. What are both of you? I know both from I would put the broader modern data and adjacent world, but where are we going wrong these days? Like where are things going off the rails? And Rocky just smiled. And just to be clear, like, I've talked with both of you extensively about this because we all know each other and everybody knows each other. Everybody has opinions on things. Maybe you disagree with me on things, or people disagree with each other. But Rocky, where are people going wrong these days? Your opinion?
Yeah, I would say that a kind of common pattern that I see is, because it has become so easy to get up and running so quickly across many of these data tools, right? The compute can be spun up in, minutes, if not seconds, across all of these tools for whatever workflow that you're trying to accomplish. And the move fast and break things mentality is not gone from these companies. That is still very present to this day of cool, like let's just do this. Like, yeah, we can optimize later, we can clean up our tech debt later, let's just get these things up and running. And it's not that they're doing that and that is inherently the issue. They tend to do that with underskilled people who haven't seen a mature tech stack before, who don't know, hey, when should we start to look back and fix some of these things? When should we start to, do the maintenance and the cleaning as opposed to build every day of the week, right? And so I think having a little more of that balance, and this can be a great place to bring in outside expertise to say, hey, like you guys already have, be it 100 DBT models or like all of these dashboards or something, are you still in hypergrowth mode for your data team, or can we move this to like a really rigorous, disciplined function to where the next thing that gets built is absolutely value add, you know, and not just kind of an incremental cost. Yeah, Joe, what do you think?
I think a lot of companies just spend time. This isn't data specific, but it definitely applies here. They just spend time working on things that don't matter. And I think it's really easy to go down a rabbit hole in the data world and build a bunch of DBT models and look at dashboards for things that have a lifespan of 1 week or a month even. And next thing you know, that contributes significantly to your overall cost. It confuses people because they don't know where to go to find the answers to one question or another. And there's just like a cognitive overload of things to deal with. I think when you look at the kind of data problems that companies face, they're usually mostly the same until you get to some mega scale. And where companies don't tend to focus their time on is actually generating revenue from the data they have, or like optimizing fixing their operations, let's say. Instead, it's more along the lines of some kind of suite of metrics that are supposed to keep everybody informed, when in reality, those don't really drive decisions or change.
Yeah, I mean, I just ran into this
and so
a client. Go for it, Lauren.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen exactly that, and it's often not the most obvious thing to the business that's the gap, right? It's like I've been helping out a business that had, just the messiest Snowflake warehouse, and they had models spun up, but they didn't exactly know what they were doing with them. And, one benefit was that we got all of this cleaned up, but the dramatically larger benefit was every time a new dashboard was getting made at the business, it was actually getting used. The views on that were way up. The amount of questions they had about that were way up, because now they didn't have, 10 poorly made models that didn't address all the business questions. They had a smaller subset of really directly business related models. And so it's not just about the efficiency in the warehouse. That's nice to have, obviously. But if you're being efficient there, you're probably answering the business questions better, right? And not just making models to make models.
What's it like, though, to as a consultant, you're always kind of politically, diplomatically in a tricky position, right? Because you want the work. If you're honest, which sounds like you guys are, you want the work to be good, to move the business forward. But you're going to piss people off. And those are the people who are, do you find a champion who listens to you and not worry about, everyone else? Or how do you navigate that? I assume it depends company to company.
I think that's kind of the first thing you need to suss out working with anybody, is who is most closely aligned with your expectations or what you want to bring to this project. And I don't think the duration of the project matters either. What does matter is like providing value or making things happen quickly, because it's almost kind of like an inverted relationship from being an employee, where you have a little bit more leeway. If you're coming in as somebody who's an outside expert, like, you need to make things happen really fast and prove value and buy yourself some breathing room. But step number one is build rapport, build some kind of relationship with a person internally who gets how you fit in and gets how you can make these changes to their current technology, their current operations, whatever.
Yeah, having that first piece of work like super tightly scoped, the success criteria just absolutely nailed down, is super helpful. Because if you want to have anything else go well with this company, if you can't say, hey, like, we budgeted 40 hours to this, like this much to discovery, to work, to documentation, and we nailed that, getting that second thing approved is going to be so much more difficult, and where it goes from there is always going to be different. But I honestly spend a lot of time just getting those first couple things, like every little detail lined out, because they're probably used to someone saying, hey, like, it might be 20 hours, it might be 40 hours. We're not exactly sure. We don't really know where that hour budget might go. So if you can show that you have that part buttoned up, it goes a long way.
Mm-hmm. That was some of the advice Lauren gave me when I was consulting a few months ago. She said at the beginning, definitely just over deliver a little bit to really to build up that trust. Yeah.
Yeah.
Love it.
Especially if you have a longer term project and you can get a quick win or two in the first couple weeks or whatever that timeline might be. I think that sets a pretty good precedent.
Yeah, yeah. We've got a good question here from Sumit Kumar, who says he doesn't have experience. Sumit, I said he or they will say, I don't know the gender. I don't have experience working with small data teams, as I've only worked at large public tech companies. Other than working at smaller places, are there other or better ways to get applicable experience or expertise in order to become a consultant? That's a great question. What do y'all say?
I would say that it's going to be really similar to any internal team, but the decision making is so much more tightly owned at one of these small companies, right? It's. I'm sure you've got internal teams that might be, closer to that company's in size, but what they want to do has so many more dependencies outside of them, right? They've got such a longer chain of command. Really, just think about that, and then just take that chain of command, and now it's probably one person. And it's probably just this little team right here who has to deliver and is fully accountable. And that's honestly the biggest decision. And these people are going to be scrappier. And so they expect you to be more resourceful and scrappier as well. So I wouldn't say that it's, necessarily like you have to go out and seek that experience. It's just some of those parameters are just a little shifted in how they're going to operate, is my opinion there.
That's great advice. Yeah. What do you say, Joe?
I agree. That was very well put. The only consideration, I guess, from like a technical standpoint, is like some of the tools might be different. You might be using in-house stuff where another company out there is using a vendor solution or something. But 9 times out of 10, you could figure those out relatively quickly if you have some baseline level of experience yourself.
We'll get Lauren back in a minute, guys. I think her audio was tricky for everybody, was it?
That's correct. Yeah.
Yes, I assume she's signing out and relaunching. The great thing is I'm under no illusion that most people tune in to hear Lauren, not me, and our guests. So she's the type of person who, even if you only hear 50% of what she has to say, people still listen. So hopefully she'll get her internet back up. But if not, we'll keep going for a bit. To the question there that Sumit asked, I would say also look up the work of the Seattle data guy, Ben Rogojan, who is now here we go. Here's Lauren, who is a data consultant, writes a ton about that. About that transition from working, I think, primarily in FANG and other big tech companies, and now we're doing consulting for companies of all sizes. And he talks about the change in perspective and a lot of this stuff. So check out his newsletter and LinkedIn postings and stuff if you haven't already. So you're back, Lauren. We're hoping that your audio will be better now. So.
Oh yeah, no, I'm in the middle of moving and I'm a lazy piece of shit. So I've tried to set up my internet, then it doesn't work. Then I try to set it up again. Then I shoot it through my phone. And so it's a big comedy of errors.
This sounds better already, so it's all good.
No, excellent.
Let's get into, I don't want to say the spicier stuff, but what's maybe not even just about being a consultant, but in terms of sort of what we're all seeing out there. I think the beauty of doing consulting, again, which I've done periodically, is you get a real sense of you're able to take the pulse of a lot of the things that are happening. So what are some of your hot takes? It can go in any direction.
Lauren, do you have any to start us off?
I have my own hot takes, but yeah, Joe, you start with your hot takes on things that are going wrong, things that can be done better. Yeah, start it off, Joe.
Yeah, well, I wrote about this in my Substack post. Like, I do think a lot of companies out there just have been dumping monetary resources at data problems that aren't really problems for them, or they could be solved in ways that reduce overhead for that organization significantly. Like I think that one thing we'll see over time in the near future is kind of the concept of an A team, where there's the movie. I guess that kind of applies here, but more generally, a few people who are contracted to do very specific work in the data space, for as an example, and just crush that for a handful of companies on their own. And that's all they do. It could be you're an expert at real-time pipelines, at Looker, whatever. You don't need a staff of 8, 12 data people to make things happen when you find the right people to actually supplement the rest of your operations. So I think that's not the spiciest take, but I think it's a trend that we'll see come up in the next couple of years for sure.
Yeah, I mean, to build on that, and I've used this term with Lauren before, but it's like, I think we've lost the idea of a data team as a force multiplier for the business, and it's kind of just become its own thing, its own gigantic cost center that has not been tied back to like the core operations of the business as much as it needs to be, right? I remember when I was early in my career, it was like, all right, cool. The data team is saving like the account management folks, the sales folks, the marketing ops people time for improving efficiency. And like, that was really it. It's like, that's your job. If these people are all like booking more meetings, you know, spending less time crafting slides, not asking a million people where data lives, like you're doing your job because they're doing their job better. And I kind of went over this like curve of like, oh, that was really naive, to thinking like, oh, this is great, to being like, wait, no, that was great. Let's get back to that. That was awesome, because that was just clear value add from a data team. And now in many places, I think we have data ops on top of ops that is no longer improving a core revenue driving aspect of the business. It's, you know, 1% improvements on top of a team that's making a 1% improvement, right? So
yeah, I think that whole marginal improvements, there's obviously a lot of value that can be a lot of good bang for your buck that can be had if you're starting from nothing and you've grown, or you exist at a phase where, you know, there's a bunch of little efficiencies that can be made. That's, you know, I don't think that's controversial. It's pretty obvious. But like, once you start, like, I always think of this as like, you know, just someone with like a tape measure. Like if someone were in your house and they were just going around with a tape measure and measuring things and like playing with your thermostat and everything, like you'd think that person were insane, and you tell them to get the heck out of your house. But like, so why do these companies hire all these data teams to do? Oh well, if we turn the temperature from 72 to 71, what will happen? Oh, like the couch was this many inches across this day. But you know, then we measured it the next day and it was a centimeter smaller. And it's like, what are you even talking about? Like if you measured it wrong one of the 2 days, like why are we paying?
And they wrote a
you to
data
do
test for the couch width. So.
Right. Then they hired Monte Carlo to tell them how. No, I'm just kidding. Just throwing some shade out there. But no, but like so much of this stuff of just like running around with a ruler or tape measure is not worth it. And I think like, how do we decide what's worth it then? I think it's always obvious. Like I think it's always very obvious, like tops down, like what is important for the business, what is important, and like how do we measure success, and like all this. Like we've gotten into where we're bottoms up, where let's just measure stuff and then present it to the business and see if they like it. And it's like, well, that's not really worth it in a lot of cases. And Chris on the comments says, that's it. Bringing a tape measure to all my friends' houses from now on. You'll be the most popular person there, Chris.
You'll get invited back for sure.
Yeah, you'll definitely get invited back. But like, let me ask both of you as well. Like, how did you get your first customers, or how did you get your first customers? If it's someone you already worked with or a former employer or someone you already knew, how did you get your first customer, like who was a stranger or someone you didn't already kind of know? Like how did that work for both of you? I'll ask you first, Rocky.
Good question.
Yeah. So for me, it was really just going around and talking to folks who, are either at data companies or data startups and understanding like who they're selling to, like who are these companies that are in need of help, who are like buying these products and services, and getting a sense of like, who's the pool here, that I should be looking into that would need a single person that's not going out to Deloitte to bring on a $1 million engagement, right? And that's really what I started with, and it went out from there and saying like, hey, like I'm looking for like this profile of customer. If you interact with folks who need just like some supplemental data help, please send them my way. And that's where, those first fully stranger, no warm lead, right? It was just like, hey, I've talked to you and you've talked to them, and we'll bring you back to Rocky. That's what that looked like for me. And honestly, it's really just like on almost door to door, honestly, for me, of talking to folks. They know someone and they know someone, and going from there. And I think it's a little bit of a different approach than some people have taken, but it's been good for me.
Yeah, I mean, referrals are obviously the best way to find business, but not necessarily the easiest. I think what's become obvious, what I discounted or underappreciated to start, is that finding projects where you fit is actually kind of challenging. But when you find ones that you do fit, assuming you know what the hell you're talking about, like really quickly if you can make things happen. So referrals have been a good one. Also, you'd be amazed how many problems there are in these Slack groups and other communities online. Those are ripe for a little investigation here or there. So, I mean, I don't think this is a surprise to probably any of you or anybody watching, but you uncover a lot of dirt, whether intentionally or unintentionally, just by perusing what people have to say.
Yeah, I've gotten in trouble for that too, because I've seen people on like various industry Slack groups be like, hey, here's what I'm doing is blah, 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 blah. And like, I've chatted with the person, like DM them, and I'm like, well, since you asked, like, I don't want to, put it in public, but I'll message you, like, here's how I think you should be doing this. And here's, I'll write up a little paragraph or something just to help somebody out. And, then people get mad. And then I'll just like, like, all right, well, I know what your name is. Let me go email your CFO and see what's going on. People have gotten really mad at me for that, but like, no, it's gotten me work before.
Yeah, I think that would make somebody a little more pissed off than they were just when you told them how to solve their problem.
Well, the Slacks are funny because people say so much about, like, it's one thing to sometimes you have to consider those public forums. As far as I'm concerned, pretty much anyone can get in. That's
it's public data.
Thing.
It's public. It is public.
Yeah. But so it's sometimes even giving the details of your data stack itself can be problematic. But people will lay out, here's my stack, here's my specific problems, which is kind of telling on themselves. I mean, I know then often they get fantastic advice, but like, it's, to me, it's very questionable the professionalism of doing it in that open way. And so any consequences, it's on them, right?
Well, I will give it to the various companies and like organizations that run these let's call them groups. They position them in a way where it is a super helpful community for probably a baseline level of problems. But once you start going beyond just the nuts and bolts of how a tool works, you've kind of moved past a standard level of knowledge that are usually available in these spaces. And that's where the more interesting projects usually lie. And you'll find them because oftentimes their questions are a little more detailed, they're a little hairier, things along those lines.
Yeah, I think there's a decent percentage of those questions that's just like, hey, can someone read the docs back to me? And I'm going to post in a public Slack to see if someone will do this for me, basically.
For
just
free.
kind of outsourced
Right.
for free. Do really basic menial labor for me. And then you get that next tier up that I think Joe is describing of like, hey, like I need best practices for reducing this spend, not just like, you know, can someone tell me why my Snowflake warehouse is slow? And filtering out like what is worth my time here. I would not recommend anyone just go around answering people's questions for free all the time and try and build a business off of that. It can be good to do tiny bits of it here and there to build some brand. I would not do it extensively. Is my 2 cents. But yeah,
I saw someone put out in one of those a couple months ago. In one of these ones was they put out like segment, fill in the blank, high touch, fill in the blank, and they had like a whole vendor thing. And I'm like, you're billing a customer $300 an hour or something, and you're expecting someone to just fill this out for you on one of these forums? Like, what are you, nuts? Like, is this where we're at these days?
It was like an RFP, like a fill in the blank.
It was like an RFP, fill in the blank. And someone was trying to crowdsource it to like the
if
community.
You can pull that off, that's amazing. But
yeah,
I
more
think that's
power
also
to you.
the kind of that's also the kind of stuff that as a typical C-suite person looking to build like a data practice or looking to hire somebody externally, that's the kind of crap that turns you off to bring in resources, because it's hard to prove this person knows what they say they know.
Right.
I want to
anyone
say
who has questions out there as well.
I want to make sure we say. I want to make sure we say hello to the people who said hello. So Anne Stoltzman, hi Anne. I think you were here last week too. Great to see you. Chris Tab, as always, here. Jocelyn, hi. I think that's Ramona. I can't see her name. Monica, Christine, Jason. We already said hi to Sumit. Val has had lots of good comments. We won't jump back to those because those were from earlier in the convo. And then let's go to a question from Chris, who asked, what was the aha moment, realizing you had data consultation that people really needed to hear? And I'll answer that first. I was coming from for a while working on the data evangelism side, and just being in 9-10 months of a role like that made me realize what bullshit it is. And that companies, the vast majority of companies, unless you're a big tech company, in no way need to be having these people on staff full time. Some of them do really good work and honest work. Some don't, but it's not a role that generally needs to exist. Companies should be leveraging their internal people, whether that's solutions engineers or other people who are naturally advocates and evangelists for the product, and have them do as maybe 5 or 10% of their work evangelism, rather than paying mega salaries to people like me who again don't need to be on staff doing that. So that's kind of the message that I brought to the people that I was consulting to was, I can guide your people on this. Do a little bit of it, but you don't need someone on staff full time. So again, just seeing the problems in companies can give you the idea to get your consultancy going. And I could have continued. There was tons of opportunities to work, but I'm the opposite of the other 3 on the screen here, that I don't like being my own boss. I want a boss. And I don't like the whole, billing people and stuff. I'm the type of consultant who forgets to bill people. So I'm better off in a salaried role, which I'm back in now. So what about you? What was the aha moment for any of you?
I would say when you're presented with a problem, or you see a problem repeated across multiple organizations, and you have more than one way to fix it. I've noticed this come up a bunch. Like, there's only a finite number of core issues that come up, but often you need to address them in a different way based on the context of the business. I think when you can connect those dots, being like, oh, we did basically the same solution over here, but we approached it in this method. That's when you realize you can actually kind of check the box of okay, I know what I'm talking about here, and this is something people need.
Totally. I mean, I would say for me, it was, I was at a boutique consultancy a couple of years back, and the feedback from customers when you really just followed through on what you said you were going to do was incredible. You were a third party brought in, and if you just level set expectations with them and did the work, they would simply be floored half the time. And I was like, wow, this is really incredible that the standard is so low for so much of this data work, that I feel like I should, really expand my own like capabilities here and like go out and do something a little bit more untraditional with my employment, because just like what they've been offered simply sucks. And anytime they get people who come in and do the work, they're thrilled. And I'm someone who like, I know what I can deliver and I feel good about setting expectations. So like, let's just go ahead and do that. And I would rather operate in that fashion personally. So
that was my personal aha moment. Like I was tired of being the person who could get things done and then being paid like a flat salary for it, and then having to like negotiate a raise into the next year, or a bonus or something. And I was like, this is not the motivation structure, and the incentive structure is not correct for me and what I want to be doing. That I was like, well, I could just get my own work, and I could do in 5 hours what some people take 3 days to do or whatever. And so that's why I got into this a few years ago. It's just the incentive structures are more aligned. And I mean, for a lot of 2021 and early 2022, I was working probably 70 hours, 80 hours a week because I wanted to be, and like just making a ton of good money doing all this. But we have another question here. Sumit, do you have recommended solutions for how you do billing or contracts?
I would say I have probably the most basic QuickBooks self-employed setup. And like, honestly, it's been great. I think between that and tools like Harvest, they've made it super easy to get going.
What's Harvest?
I don't know. Harvest is a time tracking software. So some companies use it to manage like all of their contractors. You can do it independently. Some of them do it if they've got folks out there. Larger companies use it to track SOWs across multiple people. So you can use it independently. Some medium-sized consultancies use it to track everything there. So that's been great. Like honestly, all of that has been super duper streamlined to where you can set yourself up with like G Suite and a couple of tools.
Yeah, QuickBooks, I also use it. I think depending on like what structure you're operating under, your LLC type, etc., you might find things are a little pricier than you anticipated. But when it comes to contracts, honestly, I wouldn't mess around with that. Like go pay a lawyer to draft up a few templates. But for billing and invoices, QuickBooks has worked best. I did try Stripe at one point. Honestly, it sucked. For this type of engagement, for something like a usage-based software product, I think it would be great. But that was my experience.
So quick consultation maybe with a lawyer and with probably an accountant. Either get the exact advice from friends who work in the same state you're in terms of setting up an LLC. For some people, it's better to do an S Corp. It's all easy. I never did more than an LLC.
Like you have to understand a little bit of basic stuff, like what's an LLC versus an S Corp versus a C Corp, how you want to structure your business. There are actually incredible tax benefits. Like you can set up like what's called a solo 401k if you're in the US. There's different like 401ks that you don't really have access to as an employee. But if you want to set these up and instead of, I forget what 401ks max out at. I think it's like 20,000 and something, but like a solo 401k, if you're running your own business, you can put a lot more money in there. And there's all kinds of tax benefits you can get in doing this. And so, even if you're billing, $20,000 a month. So, that's going to come out to $240,000 a year. There's a ton of benefits you can get by doing this, setting that up front and figuring out the best way to, manage your own money off of this. Because, in the US, what does Mitt Romney say? Like, corporations are people. So if you're running your own thing, you're a corporation now, and you have more rights.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Kelly
you got a really
here.
high 401k limit. It's like 65 grand or something like that for the solo.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
wild. Go for it, Mary. Sorry.
Kelly Hopkins. Hi, Kelly. She says, I always like plugging Wethos as an interesting tool for project scoping and invoicing. So thanks for that, Kelly. I hadn't heard of Wethos. I don't know if you guys know it. And I want to look at a comment here from a few minutes ago from James Eichelberger, who says that he was offered a director level role for a startup that essentially just needed some Excel work done. It was really weird. It's also typical of the stuff we see, right? And that's why this type of show, I feel like the people who've tuned in are people who are either consultants or thinking about becoming a consultant. The real people who should be watching it are the CEOs and the CFOs, right? To maybe think about how for so much stuff, you don't need to be hiring full-time people, certainly not on the director level. You should be getting consultants like us, right? Or like you all.
Yeah, sometimes for sure. What let's go a little spicier here. I think you both have good takes on this, and you both commented on it. What are we doing? We doing finance and DBT? We doing finance and Snowflake? We doing accounting in there? Rocky, you and I have bonded over this in the past, like a year ago or more, where we both been like, "What the F are these companies doing? Putting all of their accounting logic in SQL." What are you seeing, Rocky, and where are things going with this?
Yeah, so I think one of the underlining motivations here is folks saying, let's get it out of Excel and get it into a different tool like a BI tool or into the warehouse. And I feel like I understand that at the surface level, but I don't really see why you'd want to. You are introducing so much complexity. You are not usually making anything better. And you're also bringing in all of this liability onto the data team for something that they're not typically going to be experts at. These people very likely are not accountants or CPAs. This is not something that they've done before. They're used to joining the customer table to the orders table, right? This is a little bit further out of their comfort zone. And I don't know. I've never seen it make sense to do so. The downsides seemingly always outweigh any benefit you'd get here. And I can't imagine what your company's data priorities are that this is high enough to actually execute on, right? Like there has to be something better for your data team to be doing. And if you have such a big data team that now you're trying to do, I don't know, accounting in the cloud, why is your data team that big? Why aren't they, on business critical items as opposed to these really kind of far off operational, I don't know, items? Yeah, that's where I fall on it.
Yeah. I mean, if you're going to do your accounting in the cloud, do it in the NetSuite cloud. Don't do it in your Snowflake warehouse or whatever. Mm-hmm. So I've been at companies that did this, not to the extent that they talked about on the analytics engineering podcast. But my team was basically responsible for reconciling revenue that would then be distributed across the organization in terms of like reporting. I hated it. The fact that somebody who was on my team was responsible for this, and it was taking up let's call it 80% of a given month to get things right the first time around, and then there's an incremental cost in terms of time moving forward. It's so backwards to me. It's backwards from everything you hear engineering leaders talk about. It's backwards from most experienced data practitioners, or whatever you want to call them, people who have been in the space for a number of years. Why are you bringing more raw crap into your systems and expecting people without any domain expertise to create something useful. That is the complete opposite of what you hear data teams say to their engineering teams, where you want engineering to be tighter with their data contracts or whatever, their APIs, let's just call them. I get why companies do it. It's air quotes easy to fall into that workflow. I get why companies like DBT Labs suggest people do it. It's their product. They want to drive usage. I think it's a terrible decision from an organizational standpoint to implement that practice. So I don't think I have strong opinions on it, but that's where I stand.
Yeah, it makes sense. I remember the last job I had, the last like full-time job I had, they wanted me to like take off the first week of every month. Not take off, but like I was not allowed to take off because they wanted this to be, well, we're going to close the books this month and you're a core part of that. And I had to say like, all right, well, like the job is to, manage a business intelligence and data engineering team. Is that really my job or my team's job to like do this? And, and then it was like, yeah, like, you can't take off because then, we won't be able to pay our sales taxes on time and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, all right, whatever. Like, give me a break. Like,
Brutal.
brutal. I was only there for 7 months or so. And then I was like, all right, I'm out of here. See you later.
I mean, if you think about it, startups that have their finance teams are almost always spread thin. Who's usually working with numbers? Who's working with data in some shape or form? That's literally the data and analytics teams, like domain. It makes sense that people would connect the dots here, but in reality, it's ugly, and it just is a step backwards from where you want to be operating across an organization.
Are there, to play devil's advocate, are there companies where this really does work or make sense for them to be doing this?
I think you can make stuff work.
You can make anything
anywhere.
work. Yeah.
It has to work. It just, does it take 10 people to do, and everyone pulls their hair out and they hate it and it's a big waste of time, and that becomes 10 people's like full-time jobs for 25% of their job or whatever? Or do you just do it the right way and balance the resources the right way? But we do have a question here from Meryl, who asks to both of you, how have you handled collections issues? If you've had issues with customers and payment and stuff, like how do you handle that as consultants?
We're going from the big finance within companies to maybe lowercase
to
finance.
Little finance.
So we're a little bit all over the place, but very, very good question, Meryl. You hire a hitman and you send them to their address. No, I don't know.
Joe,
I've never had that issue.
I've had all of my accounts in good standing up to this point. I don't know if you've run into any issues. It's a great question. I can't offer any particular insight.
I know some people ask for prepayment or a certain amount of prepayment.
Yeah.
So there's definitely ways to mitigate it. I thankfully haven't run into significant issues where I'm trying to hunt somebody down, 90 days after the fact. But you do have to be on top of things. If you're not hounding people who are even a day late, like you have to assume that money's never coming. So I think there is a trust factor for sure, but there's no silver bullet here. Even upfront payment, I think will cover some of your bases, but not everything. I just get annoying as possible when somebody is delayed. And oftentimes it's not even the person you're working with. It's not their fault. It's usually somebody two spots removed who's
actually closing their books and running their accounts payable. So it's a challenge, but.
And I would say you can preempt that generally by making sure when you sign with them that you have a contract that looks at least like it's been reviewed by a lawyer, and then issuing your billing on time and everything, which Meryl, you look like somebody who would probably issue your bills on time. You look pretty serious. So
yeah. I agree. Prepayments big. I also am a big fan of I set up all my work mostly as monthly retainers. I don't really care about hours, or I don't want to do hours of anything. But we set it up as retainers. And part of that is, it's we both know what it's going to cost every month. You get me and my expertise. We're going to come in and fix stuff. We have no qualms about what the delivery is. Like, I do not, like, when I was younger, like, I got into like these hourly debates about things here and there, and I just don't want to do that. I don't think it's a good use of anyone's time of like what is an hour here versus 15 minutes there. Like, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not billing 6-minute increments, or, you send me an email and then I say that's immediately 12 minutes out of an hour or something. Like, I just don't care about that. Like, life's too short, in my opinion. My own funny story on that is, like, I was working with this one company, and I consider this just extra credit because, like, I've never been a crypto fan of any of it. And this one crypto company, I knew a guy there. I trusted him, knew him. They wanted to hire me and pay me partially in their own coin, but like I could see that like this is like right as like 2021 was ending and the coins are falling. So I made them pay the coin like every week, and then I would go and I would turn it into cash as the coin was falling throughout the engagement. And that was really a gigantic waste of time. But I thought it was funny, and I was kind of interested to do that. But I don't know. Now the coins were now the coin it was probably worth. It was like worth. I remember it was worth like 50 something cents US dollars at the time, and now of course it's trading for 0.0001 of a penny or something. So that's what that's worth.
The potential upside was limitless, right?
Yeah.
Limitless upside.
Yeah.
All right. Well, this has been great. I feel like we could talk for another hour, but we won't because we probably all have meetings. And I love this was a real tech bro show because we were all over the fucking place. So between the capital F finance and the smaller picture for us, those of you who are running your own businesses. So we'll do it again. Come back anytime, Rocky and Joe, and Lauren, since you're the co-host.
Yeah, I'll always be here. But yeah, thanks both, and thanks to our viewers. Take care, and
thanks everyone for tuning in.
We'll talk to you next week.
Yeah, and apologies for the technical issues.
Thanks.
Take
Thanks,
care,
everybody.
everyone. Thanks, Joe. Thanks, Rocky. Bye.